Hi there, I'm Miss Koenig, and this is a quick video tutorial on converting fractions to decimals. Let's jump in. Here we have our first example, which is 5/8. Now, 5/8 can be written with a slash, as you'll see it here. You also might see it on top and on bottom. And when we're converting it to a decimal, there are a couple of routes we can go. We can try and make that denominator into 100. And there is something you could multiply by to get the denominator to become 100, in which case we would multiply the numerator by that same value. For the purposes of this video, I want to talk about long division because that is a tougher strategy for some students. Now, because this fraction represents 5 divided by 8, we want to show that in our long division, meaning the 5 is going to go in the box and the 8 is going to go on the outside. I will usually put a decimal and some zeros just to help in the dividing process because we'll often need them. But how many zeros you need is kind of in flux in any given moment. Now remember that numerator is the one that goes inside the box. That's important knowledge. Now we're looking to see how many times does 8 go into 5. In this case, it does not, so I put a 0, and I'm going to bring my decimal directly up from where it was previously. Now I want to look at the next decimal place. How many times does 8 go into 50? In this case, 8 does go into 50. In fact, it goes in 6 times because 6 times 8 is 48. When I get to this step, I want to subtract, and I end up with a 2. Now, 8, of course, does not go into 2, but there's more to do before we divide that. Let's bring down a 0 because that's what moves us on to the next place value. Now, how many times does 8 go into 20? We should know that it goes in 2 times because 2 8s gives us 16. Again, we're going to repeat the step. We're going to subtract to get 4, and we need to bring down another 0, so I'm going to add a 0 on. That's what I mean about the zeros being in flux, and I'm going to bring it down. Again, we're going to repeat the step. How many times does 8 go into 40? In this case, it goes in nicely. It goes in 5 times because that's 40. When we subtract and we get a 0 at the end, that's how we know this division problem is done. The number at the top is our answer. So in this case, we have just learned that 5/8 is equivalent to the decimal 0.625. Let's try another that doesn't work out quite so nicely. So here we have 3/11. Again, you might see that fraction written 3/11, which tells us that 3 is being divided by 11. So to start the long division process, remember that the numerator goes inside the box with some zeros behind it. How many we need, we won't really know until we're in it, and that's okay. The 11, the denominator, goes outside the box. Now again, we're thinking, does 11 go into 3? In this case, it does not, so I put a 0 above the 3 and I bring up my decimal. Does 11 then go into 30? Yes, it does. 11 goes into 30 2 times, which gives us 22. And now we're at the step where we subtract. 30 minus 22 gives us 8. Bring down a 0. Every single time you have subtracted, you should be bringing down a 0. The question then is, how many times does 11 go into 80? It goes in 7 times, which gives us 77. We subtract and we get a 3. Bring down a 0. How many times does 11 go into 30? It goes in 2 times, which is 22. Subtract, and you should start seeing a pattern. I got 2 previously, and then a 7, and then a 2. If I bring down another 0, I'm going to see 11 goes into 80 7 times. Now, when you start to see this pattern, that's how you know you've got a repeating decimal. In this case, the answer to 3/11 as a decimal, or the equivalent decimal to 3/11, is going to be 0.27 repeating, which we show with a bar on the top. Now, I hope that helps you better understand long division, turning a fraction into a decimal, or one strategy at least for turning a fraction into decimal. Ultimately, you need to remember that the numerator is the thing that goes in the box, the denominator goes outside of the box. And from there, it's just long division, lots of dividing, subtracting, and bringing down a 0. I hope that helps. Have a great day, and thanks for being here.